Alright, like many others, I didn't want to miss out on that exclusive PvP beta tester title, so I decided to grind out the required amount of games to get to that final persimmon chest last week. And I have some reservations. Before we dive into the details, let's first situate me as a player. I am your average occasional PvP enjoyer. I'm literally a middle of the pack, mid-gold player who hasn't even tried most specs in ranked. In fact, I only tried 2 builds so far, and I didn't even play a single ranked game until the PvP Rush event a couple of months ago, during which I actually discovered I like Conquest and got to Gold 3 by playing a Staff Breaker. The push mini-season cemented that status as I got to mid-gold by the time I got my title and actually stopped queuing for more games as soon as I was done. I feel like I'm part of the target audience for push, as Arenanet himself states that it's a fun, casual alternative that simplifies gameplay by focusing on action and teamwork around a single objective. And with fewer objectives to juggle, it's perfect for both seasoned PvP players and newcomers, offering a fast-paced, low-pressure way to enjoy competitive play while gently introducing the mechanics and strategies of Conquest. Let's be honest here. I do think it's a great introduction for new players to PvP because of that single objective. But if you're a seasoned veteran who exclusively plays PvP, you had no choice but to participate. You either played push or you swapped games until the mini-season ended. Personally, I enjoyed the idea of fighting 5v5s around a single objective, at the start of the game at least. I chose what I would consider to be a cheesy scrapper build that allowed me to spam grenades and the hammer 5 stun, as I assumed most people near my rating would struggle with kiting. I simplified things even further by also keybinding the snap to target option so that I wouldn't even have to aim my grenades. And if someone kited well, I would either hit that key again so that I could aim manually or just deselect the player, which allowed me to do the same thing. That meant that the start of every game was the same for me. I would super speed and stealth my teammates, drop hammer 5 behind a node and spam grenades, hoping to get a quick advantage that would let us snowball the match. And this actually leads to one of the first issues. If either team gets wiped and has their respawn time staggered, a smart enemy team would have someone push the node and the rest of the team would camp the enemy's base waiting for them to respawn. This accomplishes one of two things. If those players simply ran out again, they'd be picked off instantly, which would just perpetuate the cycle. Smarter players would instead choose to wait for their teammates to respawn, which practically means sitting AFK in spawn for a good 5 to 20 seconds, which also means that the node would be pushed up all the way to their base. I don't think there's a proper fix for this, except maybe not dying. You'd probably already have guessed that more experienced players would be inclined to choose the second option, which leads me to my next point. The matchmaking was atrocious. When I was placed into a team during the previous season, the skill levels of the players around me made sense. This just wasn't the case during the beta. I encountered willbender duos who knew what they were doing and why they chose that particular combination, godlike reapers, berserkers who would solo enemy teams, and players who would run to the middle looking to keep dueling even though the node was near their own base and they would lose the game that way. An argument could be made that the players who would constantly run to the middle were bots, and that is probably true for some of them, but that's just one example. I had games where I or another player would just run the node all the way to the enemy's base, and the other 9 players would just charge each other regardless of where the objective was. Now, this wouldn't be an issue if it were unranked, but we're supposed to be matched with people of equal skill level with Anet's Glico 2 matchmaking algorithm. This simply wasn't the case. On the plus side, this meant that my games ended quickly and I got my title faster, but it worries me for the long-term viability of this game mode, because if this is happening now during a beta that forces PvP players to play push and incentivizes everyone else with an exclusive title, it begs the question of how many people will actually want to play push once it's released. And we already have a PvP mode that's being largely neglected by the overall player base with Stronghold. Arenanet themselves mentioned that only about 10% of the unranked games are Stronghold games. So that begs the question, is the population there for a game mode like push? I'm not talking about your or my overall feelings about this, but about whether there's an actual high enough number of players who will continuously want to play push. Or will we see more mini-seasons instead, basically forcing PvP players to play this, while PvE players might choose to not participate the next time around? It is hard to estimate how many PvP players there are, or even the general player numbers for that matter. Arenanet doesn't publish official statistics, and sites like MMO Population guesstimate how many active players there are, but we have no way to verify the accuracy of their data, let alone trust it. And sites like Steam Charts offer no help either, as most of the players use the legacy launcher. And I wouldn't want to use GW2 Efficiency's registered accounts either, as those probably contain alts and abandoned accounts. But for any single MMORPG, I always assume the same population spread where the largest part of the players focus on PvE, with only a minority actually engaging in endgame content such as raids, strikes and fractals, and an even smaller subset actually clearing the challenge modes. Add to that a solid but small base of World v World and PvP players, but definitely not the majority. World v World might ironically give us some insight, as in the EU you will see some queues during prime time to join EBG or one of the Borderlands, but seeing a queue for all 4 maps at the same time, that is either rare or a bug. Arenanet hasn't officially stated what the maximum map capacity is in World v World, but a fair guess would be that there's not even 500 players in a single region playing World v World at the same time ever. Now, if we go back to Arenanet's original statement, push is basically pandering to the PvE crowd, hoping to get them to play more PvP. If I were them, I'd avoid trying to incentivize players who have limited interest in Conquest, and instead make that mode so good that people want to actually play it. And that starts with solving the botting problem, the alleged win trading that might disincentivize up-and-coming players, and generally try to create a healthier scene. Once they get the basics right, why not introduce a few seasonal twists? Like having exploding pumpkins on the map during Halloween that can be targeted and cause damage to both allies and enemies, or snow cannons during Winter's Day that create icy patches which make your characters glide, or maybe randomized boons and conditions during April's Fools, and have regular PvP seasons in between those events. So what's next? Well, this beta was step 1 of a 3-step plan to get everyone to test out push and give valuable information and feedback to Arenanet. I'm not sure if we'll get more betas, and if so, how many. But if we do get more, we should probably know soon if people care enough to want to participate a second time without the incentive of an exclusive title. Step 2 is polish, which probably means filling in the missing textures, which they warned were going to be basic for the beta. I also hope they'll fix the node desyncing, because in most of my games, the node's area would move behind the circle that would designate where you have to stand. This is a minor issue, but it doesn't look great altogether. Then again, I do assume the devs have also noticed this themselves. And the final step will be the actual launch. But I'm not sure if that'll be enough to push me to play more PvP.